I'm Elizabeth Prest, and I am here with Kasia Musur, CEO and founder of Vent. Welcome back, Kasia. About 2 years ago, you had done a study on toxic leadership in data based on the D3M Labs community. So D3M Labs has had a large community of data professionals, largely based in Berlin and Germany, but also in other countries. And you studied toxic leadership that these individuals had experienced. As I remember, some of the major findings of that study were there has been a lot of anger at data and the truth of data, that people were not very happy with the insights that these data professionals were finding. And another point was that there was this constant clash between technical people and non-technical people, in that technical people wanted to get into the technical detail, and the non-technical people were putting pressure on the technical people to improve their communication. And there was this constant struggle or tug of war between these two camps.
The results really showed that the communication aspect was really difficult to jump over. It was a real hurdle, and there was also not enough time or not enough will to actually do something about it. So people were working under a lot of pressure to bring in results, which was not always clear what kind of results. And a lot of the time they were also pressured to deliver the results that were expected, but didn't match what the reality of the findings was.
Just looking back at that chapter of my life, that I was a director of data, I was one of the more prominent data leaders in Berlin, and also having known so many of these people, I felt like a lot of what we were experiencing was the late stage of the beehive, so to speak. It was the late stage of this big boom that we had in the Berlin startup scene following Corona. And then, of course, the bust, when a lot of the business models and the funding rounds were not sustainable. They were created under the assumption that the paradigm that was in Corona would continue, and this was a false assumption. And a lot of the data teams were placed under pressure to somehow produce these results. And it was not only data, there was performance marketing, the product teams, but it was this growth by analytic rote that was very prevalent in the Berlin startup scene. And I think other places in Germany, and I think other places in the world. And just, a lot of the takeaways that you had and that I had started from that. And I think going forward, what we could do better is that create better business strategies that are economically sustainable. And in terms of data, create a data strategy that actually supports the business and is not based on some sort of hype, and make sure that your workplace is healthy so that people actually can do the best, and that when you get the good people, they stay.
You can't have a sustainable business if you don't have a sustainable strategy for your talent. So it's not sustainable to put so much pressure on people without realistic goals, without even listening. You are hiring experts and not listening to what they're saying. That was something that came through those interviews a lot, that people would feed back that this is, it's not clear, it's a dead end, it's this or another, and they were just not listened to as well. So it really deteriorates people's will to work. The motivation immediately goes down, and also in many cases, people's self-belief. So it not only has an impact on how they feel on that day, it can have long-term impact on people, how you react to their expertise, and you kind of hire them for a job and then dismiss it as not important or relevant.
Definitely. And I think that Vent is so important as well. It speaks to this topic of toxic leadership. And so often people are toxic without wanting to be or meaning to be. And I think that you have these growing organizations, and they start with maybe a core group of people or a core culture, and they grow and they grow and they grow, and you always have these new people coming in, and there's always this clash between the new people and the old people, and it's actually a strategic advantage for a company to be able to grow without this clash and this battle of egos or whatever that sometimes comes as the different groups of people have to learn to work together.
Yeah, you definitely have to pay attention to creating an environment where there is not enough feeding ground for those egos. Why do people clash with egos? They come to a job and they feel like they have to defend their territory, or they have to somehow compete with each other. That's already not a great start for growing a business. So, I mean, in short term, that's the whole problem with toxic leadership, that it's about the short-term gains rather than sustainability and long-term benefits. And so you maybe want people to fight for influence and fight for their space, because then they perform better and bring better results faster, but they will burn out. This is not a healthy culture. So in long term, yeah, it doesn't work. So definitely, if it is a known issue when companies grow very fast, there are just focusing on the speed, quick results, and a lot of the stuff later comes back and bites them in the back seat, because they didn't put the strategy in as well. This is a future thinking, future-proofing your company, just making sure that the people are in the right healthy environment. Yeah.
Just looking at this foreigner aspect of the study, and also knowing that you have Fachkräftemangel and all of these discussions in Germany, that there needs to be a healthy way to integrate all foreigners, I would say. But in the data study, it was a certain group of highly skilled foreigners from actually very many countries. And I think that what we see now with these new citizenship laws that make dual citizenship more straightforward is that you give people a reason to learn German. You give people a reason to have a German identity that's in themselves and equity in this culture. And I think that is a really great way forward in terms of getting people into the club, so to speak. And I talk to so many Germans who are maybe not aware of what it is to work as a foreigner in tech in Germany, and how even as a highly educated person, even as a person who speaks German, who is somehow integrated maybe in their private life, the tech world could be a fishbowl for a lot of foreigners, where Germans are able to maybe move into bigger companies or healthier environments. But for a lot of the foreigners, there's this wall for them. It's this invisible wall, whether it be because they don't speak the language, whether a lot of them do speak the language but don't have German CVs or German soft skills. And it creates this fishbowl, creates an asymmetry that I think also was there very strong during the boom and bust. And I think moving forward, it is beneficial for everyone here to lessen that asymmetry and maybe make this fishbowl less or go away.
I think you're really speaking to the problem that there was just not enough work put into it, because you have to change that kind of environment. You can't bring in people and expect of them to assimilate completely, to get rid of many parts of them that are not German, in the way they work, in the way they communicate. If you want their expertise, you have to make a space for diversity, really. So I think that what you said about dual citizenship, that also, yeah, of course, it makes it easier. You don't have to redefine yourself, and you don't have to go through the whole administrative and emotional journey of getting rid of your citizenship just so that you can get the German one, so that you can work and contribute in this country. So this makes a huge difference. Definitely makes foreigners feel more welcome if they can be part of the German community without, being what they don't feel they are, maybe. So that's one thing. And in terms of learning the language, it's not an easy language to learn. So definitely you need incentives. And and I think there's been this clash of what Germany or Berlin wanted in terms of inviting all the foreign workers, but then not making enough space for them in terms of the working environment, and not benefiting. Or maybe we know that there were organizations that really kind of exploited that need to feel safe here, to make money, to remain here if you are dependent on a visa, to stay in. So giving people not that many options to be selective or to change their career path. So many of the people just got stuck. Kind of, there is this academic wheel of privilege, which shows you what kind of privilege you have, how it impacts your choices, and how you're going to experience your life and work life or personal life as well. And it's to do with the language you speak. If you're speaking the language of the country you live in, what you look like, how differently to the rest of the majority of the people you look like. What about your mental health? What about your physical health? Your family background? So there is a lot of things that impact how much privilege we have. And it's very easy to exploit those with less privilege. So in this context, it's definitely the foreign workers who have very often less privilege than the local people. So that's something that people, the employers should really pay attention to when they are inviting foreign workers, how they can make that, how can they balance it out so that they don't exploit? Because like you said, not everybody wants to be a toxic leader. I mean, probably a huge minority of people go in with that sort of mindset. It just happens sometimes organically by accident.
I just want to put it out there that there are German men who also experience toxic leadership. And I think that it's incumbent on any leader to make sure that people in their team are treated with dignity, and to make that part of their leadership strategy. And I think that companies need to also train their leaders to do that, because I don't think it's necessarily something that everyone who's promoted to leadership does.
I think it also speaks to the need of looking at a person as a whole human being, not only their gender, their skin color, and their background. Because definitely in the study I did, I had male white interviewees who were German for generations, and they experienced it. But this is also I came across many German men who experienced it, but not everyone wanted to be officially interviewed. So there is also the topic of whether people recognize what situation they find themselves in, and how permitted do they feel, or how comfortable do they feel speaking about it, and also who they are talking to, because maybe I wasn't the person for them to open up about it. Toxic leadership is not limited to any specific group of people. It can happen to everybody, and it impacts people depending on the privilege that they have in that situation. If sometimes you have people who experience toxic leadership at a time where they were in a very strong position, they were healthy mentally, physically, they had no caregiver responsibilities. So whatever happened to them at that moment had less impact on them than what happened maybe later when their circumstances changed. So really, you that's why you need to look at people, taking into consideration them as a whole person. We are not robots. We have life stories, and we have our emotions and everything that comes with life. So it's important to create a work environment in which this is taken into consideration, because we spend so much time at work.
So one point, because it was Berlin, and just my own reflection being this Berlin data leader, was the coolness of it all and the hype of it all. We're talking about the Berlin scale-up scene in the height of the Corona boom and bust, that people wanted to be part of it. Being part of one of these digital scale-ups was a dream for so many people all over the world. And they were willing to put up with a lot to be part of it. And it was not only about IPOs or a lot of money, because a lot of these people did not make the competitive salaries that they would have made in their home countries. But there's this element also in your study about what people were able, or what people were willing to put up with to be part of a hype.
Yeah, there was a lot of that actually, which is not uncommon. People, especially at the beginning of their careers, people put up with much more than they do later. So that's also part of the privilege, right? You want to build up your CV, you want to build up your reputation, grow your privilege. And with that comes that you put up with things that are not necessarily very healthy for you, but that's the system you live in. So that's what people do. And it was the case for the data professionals, that they got the opportunity to be part of something that was very hyped up, that will look great on their CV, and can then improve their chances of getting another job later on, without, maybe for some, without paying attention to the health consequences or mental health consequences that this kind of environment will have on them.